Yes! I think I broke my back. Made it up the steepest hill in Hermosa that connects to the back roads from town. And from here, we're gonna go off some off-road trails, see what we can find. And we'll bring you guys along, find any good downhill. So nice being able to ride.
Well, that's like, oh god, of course there's someone coming.
Yes.
Oh, going down those bumps.
We're gonna cut a trail down here and make our own Red Bull Rampage. Costa Rican Jungle Edition. Be perfect. Yo, there's like dude, there's a whole crisscross trail going down here. I don't know what's down there. It's kind of neat.
Here we go. Here we go.
Yes! I think I broke my back. It hurts so bad.
And now here we are, about 3 months since the crash, post-crash, and I can say that was one of the worst injuries, accidents I've ever had doing any sport, surfing, skating, mountain biking, and one of the most lengthy recoveries. However, it could have definitely been worse, and very glad, thankful that it was an injury that just with enough rest and recovery time, I was able to completely recover from it. But just to kind of start from the beginning of how it kind of happened, as you could see in the video, we were Titus and I just mountain biking on some empty property, some back trails that we could find, and we found this one nice, hill. Just was a really nice line. You could really get a bunch of speed going down it, and we had scoped out the line that we were taking, and it looked clear. There was no like major stumps or rocks and different stuff like that. So the main portion of the line actually went perfectly smooth going down the steepest part, and then where it went wrong is that I had so much speed I had to just keep riding on the property just to kind of bleed the speed, and that's where I ended up on a spot that I hadn't scoped out yet because I wasn't anticipating it on making it over there. So then I was just going on a spot that I hadn't checked out, and because it's just an empty property where there's cows and stuff, there's grass, so there was just this big hole that was really camouflaged in just because of all the plants that were inside and growing around it, so you couldn't see it until you were basically in the hole. And when I saw it, I knew there was no time to turn or away from it because I was just perfectly centered on it. It couldn't have been more precise aiming to crash. My first thought was to try to lift the front wheel up and maybe I could wheelie and then my back tire would go into the hole and I would maybe make it through. I tried to do that, but I just didn't have enough time, and the front tire just went straight into the hole, right over the handlebars, and ended up with 5 fractured ribs. So it was a good little crash. Definitely the worst injury I've had from any sport, doing anything really. That was the first time that I'd fractured a bone. I've never broken any bones before, so that was a first. But yeah, it was really scary because at first, when it first happened, the pain was just excruciating. I actually scream extremely loud in the video when it happened, a scream that I didn't even know I was capable of, but I don't think it'll make it into the end video just because it is painful just to listen to it again. So I don't know if that'll make it to the final video. But my first thought was, did I just break my back? Because it was the worst pain, just across my back, all the way across. And it was so bad I couldn't even move. I was just laying there, just like, it felt like I was just paralyzed and could not move at all. And I couldn't get off the ground. So this just goes to show how much safer when you're doing really anything, but sometimes maybe a bit more extreme activities, being with having other people there, or at least a friend or just somebody, so if something were to go wrong. Because the crash happened and then Titus thankfully was there. If I was just alone doing that, I would have eventually had to figure out how to get out of there, but it would have been a lot trickier because at first Titus started trying to call for help, but there was no service in the area because we're just off in the mountains. And then we're trying to think, what do we do? And I'm there just like, and he's trying to call people and we're trying to figure out what to do. We're on a road where there's hardly anyone traveling on it. Thankfully, there was one house a little bit down the main road, and I was pretty sure I knew who lived there, thankfully, because it's a small town. And I was like, I think I know who lives there, you can go and check. So Titus headed over there. Thankfully he was home, but he said he was about to leave, and that he was able to get another friend who had an SUV, and they were able to drive onto the property. And there's not footage of it just because we were so in the moment, but I kind of wish I had like a GoPro on me the whole time. It would have been crazy. But they carried and helped me get into the SUV, and I was just laying in the back, just could not do anything, and it was the most excruciating pain ever. And then they got me out of there, went home. Then I was able to go to kind of a little clinic, emergency room in town, and they were able to do an x-ray, and the doctors there told me that I had 2 fractured ribs, but then I got an opinion from a doctor in the US who looked at the x-rays, and he said that what he sees, I have 5 fractured ribs. So I'm believing the one that I kind of trust a little bit more, just because it's a more legit doctor from there. Not to hate on the ones here, but I'm going with that. So that just goes to show you, when you can, try to do something with someone. And I've talked about this before with surfing, for example. If you're surfing, it's not ideal to be out surfing completely alone with no one else out. Even if you don't go with someone, but there's also no one out there, because if an accident, like stuff happens and there's no one there to help you, you can end up in a really tricky situation. Whereas if there's just one person there with you, can really help you get out of there. So shout out to Chuck. He's the guy who thankfully was living down the road and was able to help me get out of there. And then to the recovery process, the first few weeks were just horrible, just absolutely horrible. I didn't really leave my bed at all, just laid there, and every movement was just painful. Because it's the ribs, there's nothing they can really do. You can't put a cast around your body or wrap it up or stuff. I've heard of people wrapping it up, but then I found they realized that can actually cause other issues. So all they recommended, and from the research we did, was to just rest. So I just stayed at home. First few weeks, basically, it wasn't pleasant at all, but I just had to get through it. Basically any movement, even laying there was painful, because if you're laying on your back, there's like pressure against the ribs. Even if you're on your stomach, if you're sitting, the compression hurts. If you're on your side, it's just hard to find a comfortable way to rest, but you make your way through it. First few weeks really bad. After that, it started to get a little bit better, where I could kind of move around, get up a little bit. And then probably after a month and a half is when it was feeling fairly normal to where I could kind of get back to doing stuff, but nothing crazy, no sports or anything. And then now it's been a bit over 3 months, and now it feels pretty much 100%. I do feel it a little bit in the ribs on the right because I think the fractures over here were worse. If I do certain stuff, it does hurt a little bit, but I'm just thankful it wasn't something that I couldn't recover from. So yeah, that's the story. That's the story of how this went down. And it was a real bummer because I had just gotten the mountain bike, and we'd just done another, and then this was like the second big mountain biking thing, and then this happened, and I ended up damaging the bike a little bit. The rear the derailleur got a little messed up. One of the rims got bent. There may have been some other stuff, but it didn't get totaled, at least, since it's aluminum, so it's pretty sturdy. Hope you enjoyed this video. Glad to be back recovered, and I think I'm gonna, hopefully in the near future, get back out and do some more mountain biking. Carefully, cautiously, but stuff like this happens. It's bound to happen. Eventually, you can be as careful as you want, and you might get lucky for a while, but it might happen, and that's just the part of it. If you're doing something like mountain biking, you know, pushing your limits, doing more than, like, pushing it further than you've done, because yeah, that's all I have to say. So I hope you enjoyed. Remember to keep always doing more awesome stuff, and I'll see you in the next one.